Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
So is anybody satisfied with our schools?
It is an undeniable fact that today our kids trail too many other countries in math, in science, in reading.
In Kansas, they complain schools don't have enough money.
Funding in Kansas is inequitable.
Conservatives say schools get too much.
I would imagine if we gave them 100% of the budget, they'd be back suing us again for more money.
If money isn't considered the issue, well, too much testing is to blame, or bad teachers. In Missouri, they've tried to outlaw teacher tenure. In Kansas City, the mayor worries people's perceptions about schools is robbing the city of growth. Mayor James joins us this half hour along with a panel of education thinkers as we lift up the hood on our schools. We're on location at UMKC, partnering once again with the American Public Square. Also with us is the man who wanted to be the education president, former Senator and Nebraska Governor Bob Kerrey. Also with us, conservative education analyst Mike McShane of the Show Me Institute, and the former head of the Kansas City Teachers Union, now a Missouri lawmaker, Judy Morgan. Your moderator is American Public Square founder Alan Katz.
The mayor, how significant is the education system as it relates to your view of Kansas City going forward?
We have a lot of people who come to Kansas City as young unmarrieds. That's one of the attractions of Kansas City, is that it's now considered to be kind of a good place to be if you're a millennial. And they love it, and they hang out, and they date, and they get married, they get pregnant, and they leave. Because they have this sense that the education system in Kansas City is not up to par. The sad thing about that is that it is a knee-jerk reaction based on insufficient data to some extent. There are certainly areas of problems. However, there are 15 school districts in whole or in part in Kansas City. Some of them are quite excellent, and even in school districts that do not have the reputation as being excellent, there are schools within that district that are excellent. But the perception still leads the reality in people's minds. I'd say the reality is lagging about 3, 4, 5 years behind the perception. A lot of good things have happened, but people simply don't realize it because nobody's telling that story. So I believe that the population of Kansas City would be significantly higher if over the last 20 years we had been able to put up signs along the highway that would say Kansas City, best public education in the state of Missouri, or in the region, or whatever the case may be. People would flock here. Education is absolutely crucial to this city. It's not a part of our charter. I was criticized for getting involved in it because it wasn't a part of the charter. So I threw down a challenge, and the challenge was, tell me something that I am responsible for that is not affected by education, and I'll stop. And when they couldn't do it, I just continued.
Bob Kerrey, you were governor of Nebraska a while back, became a U.S. senator and ran for president. How does your perception of what things were and what things are fit within that?
Well, it's become more important, first of all. I mean, what you learn in high school is a lot more important today than it was certainly when I graduated from high school in 1961. I mean, you could graduate from high school barely knowing how to read or write in 1961 and get a good job, with health care and a pension, and those jobs are gone. So my own 40,000-foot view is we expect too much of teachers. I mean, increasingly we ask them to be parents, for God's sakes. They can't. Secondly, I think in the great education debate, one of the things that gets forgotten is that in 1787 in Philadelphia, the men who gathered there made a compromise. And in order to get 9 votes to ratify the Constitution to create a stronger federal government, they left a lot of power to the states, including education. Now, you can say that's a mistake, but it's done, folks, and it's not going to change. So quit comparing us to Finland. We're not Finland. We're not Germany. We're a nation where the power to make educational decisions has been reserved to the states. So don't blame your congressman, don't blame your president, and if you really want to get depressed about politics, you ask somebody just name one person on their local school board. Answer the question, how much do you spend per student? I mean, unfortunately, the level of ignorance is inversely correlated with the power that local people have over their education policy. I've got some views on what I would do if I was on the board, which in my view, it's the most difficult political job in America. And it's tough. The best way to see how hard it is parents increasingly say, well, you gave my you gave my son or daughter a B. Why didn't you give my son or daughter an A? And the response, the accurate response is, you don't get grades, you earn them. Your son or daughter earned a B. And unfortunately, at the college level, if you don't come in with a 4.5 grade average, it's difficult to even get considered. So what's happened is you got this brutal grade inflation that makes it really difficult to get an honest assessment of what's going on. And back to the first point I'm making, one of the problems with higher standards, which if I was on a school board, I'd argue for and probably get kicked off as a consequence, it means we parents have to work harder. At some point, you got to stop blaming the teachers for doing a lousy job. In some cases, they do, and I'm of the view that we ought to pay them and give them great benefits and so forth, but you need to have the authority to hire and fire. Otherwise, it's very difficult to improve the quality of your organization.
Judy Morgan, you were a teacher. You were a leader of the teachers union here. When Bob was first talking, he mentioned that we're asking too much of teachers, and at the same time, he said we ought to be able to hire the good ones and fire the bad ones.
In terms of the hiring and firing, right now in Missouri, teachers they're on probation for 5 years. So for the first 5 years, they can actually be let go without any reason, and they have no recourse. Once they reach the first day of their 6th year, they do receive tenure, and after that, they can still be fired, but it does have to go through a due process.
Okay, well, Mike, is the perception worse than the reality?
Senator Kerry, you brought up an interesting point of asking if you asked a person who their school board representative was, could they name it? Well, the problem is right now, actually, many residents of our city, even though there was a school board election, don't know who their person was because no one got enough signatures to be on the ballot. So it was entirely done by write-in candidates. And I think when we have the dysfunction that exists on the school board, or getting the ability of getting people to run for it, I think that in that case, perception and reality meet one another.
With regards to who knows their school board attendant, no offense to Judy, but I'd be willing to bet you that most of you don't know who your state rep is either, or your state senator.
Right.
I mean, there's let's not blame ignorance on the people who actually run. The ignorance is our own. The problem is that I'm not sure, to be real honest with you, that a school board is the best and most efficient way to operate school systems like they used to. I think we've gotten so enamored with the way that
You don't feel the same way about city councils, do you?
The silence is deafening. But let's go to Nick. You have a question for us?
If your panelists have plenty to say, Alan, the issue of education has lots and lots of questions from our audience right here at UMKC. This is from Bill, wants to follow up on something that Mayor Sly James said about whether school boards were an outdated model today. What would be one of those systems that would change in schools other than school boards then?
I think that one of the problems that we have with education is that there really is nobody accountable. Who do you hold accountable if a school district is not succeeding? School board, you can't get people to run, so you're not going to hurt them by kicking them out. The superintendent, at least in this district, if you wait 2 years, he's gone anyhow. I've been in office since 2011. If I don't count the interim superintendent, I'm now on my 3rd superintendent, okay? I think that in any organization, there has to be consistent leadership for an extended period of time in order for it to succeed. I happen to favor doing away with school boards in some instances, not all, and having basically a 3-headed leadership team of a CEO, Chief Education Officer, COO, Chief Operating Officer, and a CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and that those people would then be responsible to the mayor of the city, because the mayor is going to get blamed for it one way or the other. And mayoral control systems across this country, in a lot of instances, have worked quite well.
Let's take the issue that we talked about a moment ago, which is teacher tenure. Is teacher tenure a problem?
Well, I think it depends on a couple factors. So one is, what is the determination that's made to grant a teacher tenure? Is it really a sign of, during that, for example, in Missouri, is that 5 years of really thorough vetting where teachers are being regularly evaluated, given the feedback that they need?
You can't find any other work environment where people make the case, I need to have a 20-year employment contract to be your plumber. It doesn't exist anyplace else in the workplace. You'll have no difficulty getting great teachers without tenure. The problem is they get embedded. I mean, one of the challenges with teaching, in my view, is at some point, I don't know how they do it. If I was a teacher after 30 years, I'd be sick to death of the kids. I'm not sure I'd last 10 years without being sick to death of the kids. Well, at some point, if you're sick to death of the kids, you probably shouldn't be teaching anymore.
I don't see it as a 20-year employment contract. I knew that I was going to be evaluated. Principals can drop in anytime they want and take a look at what's going on.
The problem is, what happens when you've got tenure, what do legislators do in order to accomplish accountability? They put these ridiculous high-stakes testing in place, so increasingly what the teachers are doing is spending more and more of their time preparing their students for tests rather than teaching the students in the first place.
Well,
and that's a response. To tenure.
I do agree teachers have been really encouraged to teach to the test, but I think with the changes in the No Child Left Behind, the new bill that was just actually passed in Congress not too long ago, the high-stakes testing is not going to have as much of a place in education.
If a tenured teacher, someone initiated that process, how long would it take from start to finish? And how many tenured teachers were ever actually fired?
It can maybe take 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
And now it may be extended. I mean, I'm not saying that it always happens in 3 or 4 months, but it could.
Let me ask our fact checkers if they can figure out how many times, if it's available, the tenured teachers have been dismissed from schools either here or generally nationally. But let's go to Nick. You have a question for us?
Connor is with us with a question. Connor, would you mind standing for us? Sure. Your question.
Hi. I'm a former teacher, and now I work with the Literacy Lab. And I'd like to ask how, a lot of the discussion has been about teacher tenure, and it's a big national discussion, but how can we recruit really talented people to the profession if the whole discussion is about how easy it is to fire them?
Frankly, if you're already thinking about getting fired before you get hired, I think you're probably on the wrong path.
A couple of years ago, I read a study, and it kind of dovetails into your question, I think. And this study said that teachers leave the profession for about 4 or 5 different reasons, salary being only one of them. Another one was that was the whole issue of discipline in the schools and classroom management. They felt like they were having a really hard time with that. They felt like they didn't have a voice in what was going on in their schools, and that really bothered him. And those were some of the main reasons why they were leaving. It wasn't just salary, although I think it is important to try to get our salaries up. I think Missouri ranks overall 42nd among states in terms of teacher salary.
That high?
Yeah, I think Kansas is a little bit ahead of us. I think it's 38, and Missouri is actually below Kansas. But I think to get teachers in, we are going to have to give them a voice, provide support for them for classroom management, so that because that's very important. It's very difficult to be a good teacher if you cannot manage your classroom. You cannot teach in chaos.
My answer would be, go look at what great organizations are doing. Everybody's looking for talent. Everybody's scrambling for talent. I'll bet you CEOs today, 50% of their time is thinking about how do I recruit better talent? How do they do it? Go ask them. And do a comparative analysis between the way we're recruiting talent into our schools and the way organizations away from the schools are recruiting talent. It's fundamentally different.
Hey, we've been fact-checking part of the conversation. It was brought up about how many teachers are actually fired. Tenured teachers, how many are fired? We have the UMKC librarians behind us, and Scott Helm with American Public Square has been tabulating some of those fact checks. What was the response to that? How many teachers who are tenured have been fired?
0.2% in the most recent statistics, which is 1112, with the average number of teachers per district in the U.S. at 187, which works out to about 0.4 per district.
I also have a question, Alan, if I
I'm sorry,
could be
did
so
you say
bold.
per district? 0.4 teachers per district.
That are tenured.
Okay.
Of those that are tenured.
Are you horrified, indignant there, Michael? No, okay.
Yes.
All right, okay.
You know, one thing that's sort of interesting to me, we've been talking about schools and then all the problems in schools, and no one's mentioned we don't have enough money yet. Is it because we have enough money and we're just not using it right?
Well, Judge Clark helped us figure out the answer to that one. So Missouri versus Jenkins was the landmark desegregation case. It started in late 1983, went all the way through 2003. Over the course of that time period, I believe an extra $2 billion were pumped into the school system. The school district of Kansas City were basically given a blank check by Judge Clark to get whatever they wanted. It improved the physical plant. I think it's fair to say that the physical buildings were in absolute disrepair before it started, and that's absolutely true. But if you read the judges that eventually discharged the case, much of what they said was, we don't feel like this made any academic benefit over this time period.
You know, money is a factor, but there's a lot of factors. One of the factors is, quite frankly, that, you know, we've not talked about money, but we haven't talked about race either. And you can't talk about an urban school district without talking about race. You can't talk about an urban school district without talking about the impact of poverty and what impact poverty has on the amount of money needed to overcome certain things. For example, the 30 million word gap is a good example. The kids reaching the age of 3 in poverty hear 30 million words fewer than their more affluent children counterparts. Why is that? What impact does that have on school? Should we be allocating a lot more money towards early childhood education and making sure the kids are kindergarten ready? Absolutely. Should we be spending more money on schools than we are on prisons in this state? Absolutely. But again, I think we're bass-backwards. The desegregation case was noble in a lot of ways, but we were chasing a dream. One of the concepts that came out of the desegregation case was that we have horrible schools, but if we build good schools and we put great themes in them, white people will move back. Now, what that said to me was, black people, you ain't smart enough to do this on your own. We got to have some white people sitting next to you, all right? And that whole patina of lowering the bar or lowered expectations for people of color still permeates in certain areas today. When I was on the board of a charter school, an alternative school, and we had teachers who literally said in a meeting, these kids can't learn, they were fired on the spot. Because if you're a teacher and you're telling me that these kids can't learn, then what I'm really hearing is you can't teach. Goodbye.
I would say the greatest burden of freedom is there absolutely is a connection, almost cause and effect, between effort and results. And one of the problems, at least in Nebraska, that I hear from teachers is kids are coming into school saying, you can't tell me what to do. And if you behave that way, you're not going to do well in school, and you're not going to do well when you get out of school. So if you start making excuses for bad behavior and lack of effort, and I'm willing to spend more in low-income areas. I do think you've got to compensate in that way. But if you start making an excuse for bad behavior, you're in trouble. You're not doing me any favors.
I'm sorry. I want to decouple this conversation about bad behavior and race. That's part of the problem. I'm sorry. But if we start talking about race and all of a sudden we're slipping into bad behavior and not working, that's one of the issues that needs to be addressed right there. Because there's a whole lot of white kids walking into school saying the same thing. Nobody really cares.
Look, we can't have a conversation about race if every time I make a comment, I wasn't talking about race, Mayor. Every time I make a comment like I just made, all of a sudden I'm a bloody racist.
No, nobody said that.
Okay.
That's not true. Nobody said that.
Ring the bell.
Okay, the bell. Okay.
Mayor, I think you made I think we do wait way too long to worry about the education of our children. You show up in kindergarten at 5 years old, behind in numbers and behind in words, and it's highly unlikely that you're going to be reading at the 4th grade level. If you want to increase the number of low-income students who are graduating from college, take $50 billion of the $150 that we're currently subsidizing right now in higher education and spend it on early childhood education.
We cannot simply append another grade onto a system that we don't think is working.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah. It happens to be that my sister runs an early childhood education program called EduCare. It's Susie Buffett's program. And she will tell you, fine, and what you said is terrific, it's going to cost you $18,000 a student. to hire the kinds of professionals that you need. If all you want to do is hire a babysitter, you can get it done for $4,000 a year. And that's probably what Missouri provides mothers to get child care. What is it? How much do you provide?
Not that much.
Right, but so early childhood education done right can be phenomenal, but it's not cheap.
Okay, we're going to go to a question out here now.
Yeah. Now, speaking of money, which was your last big discussion point, Todd in Lenexa has a question relating to that. In another area of our metropolitan area, a big swath of land called Kansas?
Something like that. Thank you, Nick. Here in Kansas, we have a governor and a legislature that seems to be more concerned about defining what proper funding for education is and avoiding the responsibility of that when they are the ones defining it in a way that sets limits on the ability of the educators to get the job done with the limited funding they already have.
If his proposition is we're going to spend less and we'll automatically get more, I think that's a flawed proposition. I don't think you can spend less and get better performance. On the other hand, we have had situations. The District of Columbia is actually a good example. We spent more and got less. So it is nowhere near as simple as we just need more money. And I haven't seen the details of what Governor Brownback is proposing. Since I disagree with about 98 out of 100 things he proposes, it's not unlikely I would disagree with this one, but I just don't know.
Nick, you have a question for me?
Well, first of all, I've cast aside the 3 slips that I got saying Bob Kerrey for president, so I removed those from the pile.
One ex-wife's enough.
But Carol wanted to know, how do we get our best teacher education graduates motivated to teach in the urban core?
You know, I think an important part of it is just preparing teachers in an environment in which they will encounter urban schools. When you do your student teaching, you're in like little tiny college towns somewhere where you're teaching a lot of like professors' kids and stuff, right? You might be more likely to say, I want to stay in schools like this. So anytime we can have programs like teacher residencies or you've got great urban universities like this one here that actually give students clinical experience in urban schools, I think is important.
Now, Andrew wants to know, why are charters like the Kaufman School successful with the same student population as the Kansas City, Missouri School District?
Well, I would say, like, we've got schools in the Kansas City Public Schools are successful too. You can look at Lincoln College Prep Academy. It's a very successful school.
There's a lot of charters that perform worse than the lowest KCPS school. The difference is that you don't hear about it. When I was on the board of Genesis School, and we were meeting, it was a charter school. We were meeting with our sponsors and some other charters. We had a big charter meeting. And one of the things that came out of the conversation from some of the charter members was, our schools are safe. And the response that I heard, I never forgot, was, you know, you can put a child in a Volvo or a Mercedes, the safest cars on the road, and head them off down the wrong street. And at the end of the day, they're going to get nowhere, but they're going to be safe in the process. And that's happened in some charter schools. They're not subject to the same rigorous evaluations as public schools in a lot of ways. I happen to like charter schools. I happen to like all schools, but I'm going to break it down even more. I don't particularly care what school it is, as long as it's a quality seat that every kid in this city has access to, regardless of race, socioeconomics, or anything else. Put them in a quality seat and call the school whatever you want.
I don't actually know what the Kaufman School does that makes it better. And I think one of the things that we have been chasing in education for decades is folks see a school that's clearly doing well. They go into that school and they find the secret sauce. And then they go back and then they say, okay, now everybody has to do it. Right? We were talking about Finland earlier. This is what happens. So people go over to Finland. They say, oh, Finland schools are great. So what we need to do is come back and make our schools look like Finland. To me, what I like about the idea of charter schools is the opportunity for educators to create schools, to be entrepreneurial and to be innovative. They clear a lot of the underbrush that I think stifles innovation and experimentation in traditional public school districts. Sometimes it's not successful. In many of those cases, they were shut down, right? They closed. And some view that as a bad thing. I actually don't. I think these folks tried it. It didn't work. They shut down. So I think that we still have so much to learn about how to educate children. We don't have a one best way. There isn't one answer. So the best thing that we can do is try and encourage entrepreneurial educators, innovation, experimentation.
Yes, we have a fact check, Alan, and this seems almost implausible, unbelievable that we could even have an answer to it. The fact check was, are charters as successful as public schools? As many years as we've been doing this, I've never had an answer to that was satisfactory. But Scott Helm at the fact-checking table has tried to get the answer for us. What was the answer to that, Scott?
So there are two studies, one from 2005, one from 2011. They're both in public economics journals, and charter schools as a whole are less effective than public schools.
Okay, so that's not the only research that's. Look at the. Well, all I'm going to say is I can say look at the Stanford experiment.
This was a Google search, remember, not Wikipedia.
Okay, sorry.
We're taking it up a notch.
Again, I will say, so the experimental studies in Boston, in New York, Susan Donarski and others, just recently in the New York Times, if you read like the upshot, it came out like 3 weeks ago. I mean, there's been research that's shown large gains in Boston and New York and others. Look, I'm not trying to say that. I think the sort of worst case scenario is that it's mixed and that they're about the same. But there has been research that's been done that's shown positive effects of charter schools.
Now, we have something for each one of our panelists, and that is that we present each one of our panelists with a civility bell.
Oh.
These are bells which we hope you'll keep in your office, and when someone gets a little loud or uncivil, you will hit the bell, and therefore you will be fine.
Good job to you. Yes.
Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.